For the past several years, the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California has embraced puppetry in the form of the Pacific Pals. These colorful underwater personalities help educate visitors about different issues related to animals that live in the ocean. I sit down with the aquarium's Creative Arts and Science Supervisor, Luke Richmond, and the Creative Arts and Science Education Coordinator and puppeteer, Sara Berman, to talk about the aquarium's use of puppetry in this episode of Under the Puppet. You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Welcome to the show that talks to puppeteers about the art and business of puppetry. My name is Grandpa Choco, and this is Under the Puppet. Well, Sara Berman, Luke Richmond, welcome to Under the Puppet.
Thanks for having us, Grant. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Now, we're going to talk about your amazing work with the Aquarium of the Pacific, but I want to kind of get a little bit of background on both of you. Do both of you remember your first exposure to puppets?
Yeah, definitely. When I was a wee child, I remember very vividly sitting in the back seat of my parents' car when they were driving, and my mom, Laura, who's like the most incredible human being in the world, she would turn around in the front seat, and she had an Ernie and a Bert, little hand puppet, and she would sing the Mana Mana song to me as a child, and I just have this really vivid memory of that, and from that memory, it spawned this just attraction to puppets forever, like having my Beanie Babies, trying to bring them to life, and anything that I had that was a toy, I wanted to breathe life into it in that way. So I'm really grateful to her for that, and introducing me to things like Fraggle Rock and the Muppets, and it's a big thing for me and my family.
And how about you, Luke?
In my case, I'm sure the first thing I saw as far as puppets went must have been Sesame Street, but my actual earliest memories of puppet things that I was fanatical about would have been Dark Crystal, which I watched over and over and over again as a kid, and then some of the puppetry and like Neverending Story, for example. That was the period where I was just becoming cognizant of that sort of stuff. So, but Dark Crystal was my go-to puppet movie when I was a kid.
Well, and you, Luke, have a degree in film from Long Beach State. What made you decide to study film? Was it films like that?
That certainly played a big part of it. I mean, I was always very fantasy oriented when I was a kid. Of course, there's a whole bunch of movies I enjoy. For me, getting into puppetry as a thing that's an actual part of my career has been a somewhat more recent thing. I've always been enthusiastic about it, but it was really because of the unique nature of the mission and the goal and the kind of the situation that we found ourselves in when we started this program at the Aquarium, that I went from being a mere puppet fan to being a puppets fanatic and participant.
Would you call yourself a master of puppets?
And Sara, you studied some communication and theater arts and performing as well, right?
I did, yeah. One memory that really particularly stands out to me was a production that I was in Alice in Wonderland, and I got to play the Cheshire Cat. And in doing that, it was really my first on-stage puppetry experience that I had, and I just remember the feeling of making people laugh sort of behind the scenes, and waving the tail and blinking the eyes, and chattering those big teeth, and having a lot of fun. And it just instantly became like, oh no, this is it for me. I need more of this. It was just the beginning. And I think some of that, combined with, the communications aspect, really led me to wanting to get into a career where saying something important and kind of marrying those two things together. So what better thing to do than get into conservation messaging?
Well, and what brought both of you to the aquarium?
Well, so I basically started working at the Aquarium when I was in college as my college job, because it was a matter of, I work in the education department, and we do interpreting with guests and the shows and things like that. And I was just doing that. And right about the time that I was ready to go off and pursue a career more directly in film, which I had done, some of through the earlier part of my career, the Aquarium suddenly decided they wanted to create this theatrical program, and with the resources that were available and the fact that we wanted to do live shows every day and so on, and they asked me what I would do, and I said, well, puppets is what I would do. So we started with just one show at the Aquarium with Bertrand the talking eel. He basically teaches us about veterinary care by resisting needing to get a checkup from our vet, and that was our first show. But then the whole thing expanded about a year or two later, and that was, I think, Sarah, that was when you came on board, right?
Yeah, I came in to do an audition for Bertrand the Eel. I remember that. I think I might have been working in sales at the time, and then I was like, no, this is it. This is my chance to like go back in. And you so rarely see auditions for puppetry. And I went in and did my audition as a grumpy talking eel. Yeah, from New Jersey. Yeah, it was a good time. And then I think it just sort of blossomed from there.
Yeah, it was easy to stay at the Aquarium because it's great to every day come home from work having learned something new, and also feeling like what we're doing really is for something important, and it's a very strong motivation, and so it has pushed us to just keep this program growing and going, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, and it's also a beautiful place to work too. I mean, to walk through where all the tanks are, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, wow, I get to come to work here every day, and it's amazing.
It's pretty hard to have a bad day when there's penguins around.
Right.
Yeah, if you're frustrated in a meeting, you can always just go look at the penguins or the otters or the eels, which is sometimes some of us are more interested in that. So whatever it is you're into.
Well, aquariums are places for education, and you mentioned the education department, but I would love to talk a little bit more about this creative arts and science education program, because I think that might be a little different from other educational sort of institutions to have this creative arts thing. Can you explain the purpose of that program? I mean, you kind of touched on it, but a little bit more in depth.
Essentially, the goal was to find a new way to reach our audiences in a way that is different from what they normally see in an aquarium. Because almost any aquarium you go to, you'll see somebody doing presentations about the animals and things, and we have all those things. But rather than engaging at a purely intellectual level, we also wanted to engage people in an emotional way, and also find kind of new ways into people's thinking that might allow them to kind of start thinking about the ocean and start thinking about conservation in a way that was a little bit sort of softer. And I think the biggest goal of the program has really been to just use empathy and use humor and use joy to get people to just kind of feel a sense of bonding with the characters personally and with their goals. And with puppets, it's everything that happens suddenly becomes much more magical, and it's really helped to kind of tell even sometimes really difficult, tough messages. When you put them in the voice of Seymour the shark or Captain Quinn, they suddenly become something that people might feel a little more open-minded about. So that's in short. I guess that's a long. Maybe that's not so short. I don't know, Sarah. What would you say?
Yeah, just anthropomorphizing animals that wouldn't normally get a chance. Like an eel, I think that one's I keep going back to. I think a lot of folks look at them and their first reaction is to go, ew, no. But they are just as important to the ecosystem and the ocean, and learning about their place in the world is just as important. I think something that we may have struggled with at the beginning, after I came on as a performer and then later as a creator, was we wanted to make animals that maybe were a little uglier and needed more attention, like halibut or sea bass. But later it seemed the audience really, we had to kind of adapt and go, all right, maybe a seahorse is what we need.
And I think that's the thing too, because one of the biggest challenges in education about this stuff is that about teaching about the oceans, that everyone wants to talk about otters, and of course otters are incredibly important. Everyone wants to talk about the whales and dolphins and all these things, and those animals get all the attention. But when you want to talk about stuff that's maybe in the term that is used in the industry, less of that charismatic fauna, less charismatic animals, people oftentimes will have a very hard time paying attention to a creature that sits on the ocean floor for 98% of its day and scarcely ever moves, or something that isn't necessarily pretty or cute in the normal way. So I think that was the thing with Bertrand the eel was, all right, we'll take an animal that makes people typically go gross and see if we can get him to suddenly become a subject for empathy and enjoyment. And now Bertrand is a very popular character, and when his shows with the aquarium are attended by hundreds of people every day, and that's been our goal going on. But as we progressed, though, yeah, I guess we have leaned a little bit more toward charismatic animals too. I mean, Piper the seahorse, of course, she's a seahorse.
Well, and did the success of the Bertram Gets a Checkup show lead to like the further development of Pacific Pals Live?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The aquarium reached out to us and they said we want to expand, and we tried a couple of different shows in our outdoor space first before we settled on Pacific Pals Live. Luke and I worked very closely together to get that script kind of where it is, as well as with our actors. Something that's really important to us in our program is listening to our actors. They have so many great ideas. Miles Tabor, who does Captain Quinn, David Beach for Seymour Shark, Michelle Chaho for Piper, and Chris Patstone for Axel. They come in with so many great improvs and very like clear-cut puppetry decisions, very precise, that have really added a lot to those characters and helped us grow them. So I think our team is incredible. They've really helped us grow that show a lot.
Yeah, it was a matter of when we were back doing Bertrand the eel. It was an experiment at first because the aquarium had never done anything like that, and there were definitely some hiccups in the beginning of the process. But once we decided on doing a puppet show, it was then all right. We have to find performers who can do this puppetry, and the aquarium's a nonprofit, so our budgets and everything were constrained. But luckily, we found some really good actors, and over the years, we've had certain members of the cast come and go. But now we've got a really strong team, and then once we had one successful puppet show, it was a matter of looking into other spaces in the aquarium where we could do another one. So that's where Pacific Pals Live came from. Because we had this theater, the Marine Life Theater, which we all someday hope to give a more interesting name. But the Marine Life Theater was just sitting there for years at the aquarium and doing story times and little activities that weren't necessarily big draws. And once we had this successful thing going on at the veterinary center with Bertrand, and was like, well, let's just put more puppets over here. And then we had to come up with a whole cast and figure out a way to make that theater itself an interesting place, because it doesn't have any live animals in it. It's just a space. So it's really kind of turned it into one of the most popular spots in the building. And it's been a wonderful thing seeing it come to life and seeing people actually excited about what goes on in there.
Something that's always been kind of interesting to me about that space is there are children and adults who come for the show. And then there are young, aspiring puppeteers who come.
Yeah.
And they bring their puppets with them to the show. And afterwards, we'll stick around and they go, how does this work? And, you can kind of see the wheels turning, and they'll ask the performers questions, and they want to learn the art of puppetry. I think those are my absolute favorite interactions that we have. Those are really special.
Mm-hmm.
When you're writing a show for that space, or I guess this could be applied to anything that you create, because you create so much, how do you balance the sort of educational aspects that you're trying to get through with needing to be entertaining to keep people entertained?
This is the really interesting part. So that's kind of the challenge, right? We always say we hate the term edutainment because, I don't think anything worth doing should be reduced to a portmanteau, but that's just me. But we are essentially, we're educating and entertaining at the same time. We're using entertainment as a hook and a way to keep people interested. But the question is, how entertaining are you and how educational are you? And when can you do both those things at the same time? And when can you say, all right, the audience is with us enough and enjoying us enough that they'll invest some of their interest in hearing this message and this story, even if in this particular moment Seymour Shark's not, running around going googly 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 or any of the wacky stuff that he does on our daily level shows. And so it's a matter of finding a way to first frame the message when we first create something. And knowing, for example, with Pacific Pals Live, the goal, which Sara, I think, Sara really wrote the entire script, so I should probably let you talk about this, but it was about getting people to explore the aquarium as goal one and getting them to think about it as scientists.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of times science, in general can seem very daunting. I think a lot of folks look at it as, oh, chemistry, and this is going to be, I don't even know where to begin. And I think the real basis of that show is, okay, let's start by realizing that you are an explorer. Just by being here and making observations. And these are characters that are also making observations. So whether you're young or old or in between, we are all explorers and scientists just by observing the world around us. And that was kind of the premise of the show. So from that, when we write, we try to look at, okay, what is the core of what we're going to talk about? And then from there, we can build out. And then depending on how silly we're feeling that day is how many jokes get in there.
There are times when it's a matter of like, let's just have fun, because we really, the more the audience engages, the more the viewers, and whether they're in a live show at the aquarium or online, the more they stick with it and engage with it, the more they're going to want to learn. And a lot of the whole theory of learning at a place like the aquarium is that people learn so much without realizing that they're learning. And sometimes our goal is really just to get people to realize that that's actually happening. So when Sara Seastar says that you can explore and discover things just like a scientist does, just by looking at the animals here at the aquarium, people might think, well, I didn't learn anything today. I went to the aquarium and I just looked at some animals, right? I didn't learn, but of course you did. You looked at, have you ever seen a sea dragon before? Did you have any idea what this creature was, or know what a mantis shrimp looked like? Or, and every single person who comes in the aquarium almost certainly sees something they've never seen before. And so our goal with the Pacific Pals live show was really just get people to realize that and to start actively looking for those opportunities so that they would start to really feel it was a learning experience. And so we don't do a lot of, we stray away from being all fun facts or just trying to teach little tidbits and things like that, because, the Pacific Pals and Sara Seastar in that live show are really about activating people in a way that makes them think more deeply about what's happening in the aquarium, and getting kids to go, I want to discover and I want to explore. And so we even have a song about it, which we love hearing them hum in the hallways. It brings joy to us every time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask you about the music, because you have done some music over the whole career of the Pacific Pals. But I did want to ask, when you were auditioning performers, what were you looking for in puppeteers that you wanted? What abilities do you want them to have? What qualities do you want them to have to be cast in the show?
Sure. I think for me, a really big thing to kind of circle back around to what we were talking about in the beginning is it's not like you can always find a puppetry job the way you look on at Craigslist. A lot of times it's who you know. So for us to open the door to aspiring puppeteers, not only ones who are very talented and very polished, we also like to look at folks who are just starting out too. There is this spark in them that we look for, which is just, of course, there's the basic fundamentals, like we're looking for eye line. Do they have a sort of a idea of what mouth sync looks like? Sometimes you'd be surprised how difficult that is for some folks. That takes some practice. But in addition to the eye line, the mouth sync, and the character development, we're really looking for energy and commitment, and people who want to give 110%, and maybe they're not polished the way you would hope, but they can learn, and you can see that in people sometimes when they come in the door. They're excited, they want to learn, and they're fun. They want to have a good time, and they're there for the right reasons. So these could be the puppeteers of tomorrow. We take them at all stages, and we teach also on site.
Yeah, so our audition process is really about, the folks we have on the team now all had done some puppetry. Most of them had done a lot of puppetry, at least, and effectively are puppeteers as a major part of their identity as a performer. But we've also had people come in who really had done very little or no puppetry, but we just, through the process of auditioning them, which is really elaborate for us. It's in multiple stages, and there's different. You go and you do a monologue, and read some sides, and you do a song, and you get a little puppetry demo, and then we do a little bit of training for anybody who might be new to it, and to see if they have an instinct for it. And we have gotten some people in who really did learn how to be puppeteers in the course of the audition in a very basic way, but we just were able to look at them and go, you know what, we think you can do it. And we're able to successfully teach that. But there's also times where sometimes I guess that particular talent just never appears. So it's sometimes, the mouth sync never comes together, and it's like, well, okay, what are we going to do? But
but they're the ones who do. They're so dedicated, and they really, you can tell they have this genuine love for puppetry. They look for extra opportunities to practice their mouth sync at home with a song that they know, or can I take a puppet home and practice in my mirror? I'm like, yes, do that, absolutely. We have little demo puppets that they can bring home and practice with. And just practicing monitor work on camera. What does that look like?
mm-hmm.
We really, to piggyback on what Luke said, we've had folks of all stages, but make us laugh, be yourself. And that's the most important thing.
Well, the Pacific Pals have made other live appearances outside of the aquarium at the Skirball Center and the Hollywood Christmas Parade. Have you found that the Pacific Pals are sort of like a great entry point for people to learn about the aquarium and to get excited about coming to the aquarium?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think just seeing them, at Skirball Center was really awesome. We had folks approach our booth and the show. I think, Grant, we saw each other there at the Skirball Center that day. That was really fun.
Maybe off top, did I meet you that day, Grant?
You might have. I don't know. It's possible.
It's a small puppety world.
Yeah, I met a lot of people that day.
Yeah.
But it was cool because people approached our booth and they said, "Oh, I haven't visited the aquarium in a long time. Thanks for being here. I didn't know you had this thing. Let's go and visit the sharks and let's go see the show." So I think it's a good thing for people to just kind of see and remind them to come think like explorers with us. And that was a great day. So much fun, like big, beautiful puppets, big and small, and so many talented folks. It was great.
Yeah, it really is incredible that the animals themselves are so compelling, but the puppets really do have this magical ability to draw people in a different way. Again, it activates sort of different parts of the wonder apparatus in the brain. That the moment a puppet gets involved, suddenly everything is much more interesting. That's one of the first things that we learned, because of course the aquarium, we've been trying to do our best to be compelling educators and all those things for years and years, and learning about how to do that well and how to improve that skill. But you can take a message and put it in the mouth of a brilliantly performed puppet, and suddenly it's just so much more charismatic, even though it's coming out of a puppet. So they definitely draw in new audiences that might not necessarily be as interested in the aquarium inherently, because maybe they're more arts oriented. And also definitely open up a new pathway for our current guests to kind of think about and explore the place.
Excellent.
Abalone snails, they have got some meat, and people started thinking they was good to eat. So they fished them off the ocean floor. Now you can hardly find them no more. Abalone is gonna be alright. Shine's found a way to try to make it right. Oh, Abalone, now don't you dare despair. We got a plan prepared. We're gonna be right there. Abalone, baby, it won't be long, 'cause we can raise you up and we can help you to spawn. I love.
The next thing on my list was I Love Abalone. To talk about, was this the same sort of situation where they came to you with, here, we have this conservation problem, can you make it entertaining?
Oh, that production, that production was a doozy. I mean, when they first approached, so there was a grant that was given to the aquarium to help restore the abalone population. As it talks about in the video, they were overfished pretty much to the point of extinction, and they're not a very charismatic animal like a dolphin or a shark. This is a snail that spends its entire life in one position eating algae. And when they threw it to us and they said, we want puppets to do this, like really make this fun and engaging, I was just like, oh no, I don't know what to do. Luke, what was it that made you want to write a song?
So the Abalone program goes back like almost a couple decades. It started with trying to get some that could be in human care, so we could learn how to have them reproduce, and that took years. And once they got them to do that, then figuring out if we can plant them in the ocean and so on. And virtually everything about the abalone is something that just screams, you know what, I'm going to go learn about something else right now, because they look like a rock. Like Sara said, they sit in one spot their entire life. When they spawn, it looks like they're just spewing mud and goop out into the water. Since they're near extinct, though, no one hunts them anymore. Most of us around today have never eaten one, but supposedly they're very, very tasty, and that's the whole problem. So they came to us with this abalone thing, and we went through, one point it was like, what if we built a giant abalone costume character, and he's grumpy and he's angry that people have eaten all of his friends. And then that's really expensive and also a terrible idea. So we won't do that. And then we thought, well, maybe we'll have Seymour Shark narrate a like a sort of David Attenborough type story, but we'll make it kind of goofy and funny. We actually made a whole episode of that, but it turned out to be pretty boring. And then Sarah's like, we should do a music video. And I'm like, no, we shouldn't do a music video. That's going to be too much work. And she kept on pushing it. And
I had just seen Rocket Man, and we both love Elton John. Like, we're both huge Elton John fans. And Elton John, as you know, he was on the Muppets, and he just loves to have a good time. And the costumes are so flashy. I will always have that memory of him singing "Don't Go Breaking My Heart" with Miss Piggy. That's just magic. But I think we had talked about it, and Luke writes our music. So once he started, we agreed on it, going in an Elton John pastiche direction. He started writing the music, and I immediately jumped in and started making the costumes. So it was a lot of feathers, a lot of rhinestones. But we did it, and I think the song really packages nicely the entire story of the abalone in about 3 minutes, 3:30, and that's been really successful. It's probably more people that learn about the abalone that have in a while.
Yeah, and we really did produce it as an in-house operation. I mean, it's the costumes are created by our team. The crew, the entire crew consisted of about 5 people, plus my friend Kevin Hinman and my dad, who gave some useful help with the song. My father who's been a lifelong Elton John fanatic, really helped to dial in some of those key Elton John-esque moments that make it sound as Elton John-y as possible.
It's worth noting the piano moment, where we had 4 puppeteers working under a baby grand piano. I would love to get some footage of that online, but we had Chris, Miles, Michelle. So Chris is up there doing the mouth work, and then Miles and Michelle each had a rod that we made in-house, rods that we clipped to his little fins, and they had him playing the piano. Well, the Chris doing the mouth work was leaning back, and then Luke was underneath them holding the monitor, because we just had to really work makeshift, and I'm there just kind of trying to watch the camera and make sure everything looked good. But we rearranged an entire church lobby to make that happen. We are so grateful.
And we put it all back exactly how we found it.
That's right.
Well, this video, I mean, it's got live shots kind of out and about on Long Beach. It's got interior shots. It's got green screen shots. It's got animation. How long did this overall take to produce?
I mean, each place we went to was basically a day's worth of work getting there, shooting, and there's a lot of stuff we didn't use. Speaking of which, we have to tell the story about the dive boat.
We'll get there. Chris Patstone did the animation sequences, which were fantastic. We've never had an animator on team before. So again, he's a puppeteer and an animator. So that really went hand in hand. I think in whole, would you say the production took about a month to just shoot?
About a month, and this is not doing it every day because we have we're also doing live shows and stuff, so we had to figure out how to do this in between all that. So it took about a month, maybe, but maybe 5 or 6 shooting days, maybe a couple more. Then, and it was also just a matter of realizing what capabilities we had. So it's like, okay, well, I can do music with a little bit of help, and then okay, we can make costumes. Michelle Chaho and Sarah Bourbon can work that out, and then it's like, can we do animations? And it turns out Chris Patstone on our team is a good animator. So we were able to kind of put it all together. And then, of course, we have a bunch of really good puppeteers.
I think that was the first time that any of us had puppeteered on a moving carousel. That was something.
Yeah, that was another. And the outtakes of that are just really just as good as the stuff we use. But and there were also things we didn't use. Like, for example, one day, the Aquarium's abalone outplanting team, who go out with the abalone babies and put them on rocks in secret places in the ocean, were going out to do that. And so we decided to join them on their dive expedition. Obviously, we couldn't go scuba diving with them, but we joined them on the boat. So it was me and Sara and David Beach, and it was all going well as we went out there to the location. But then the boat just parks. It drops anchor and parks in this spot about maybe a mile or so offshore. And then we just sat there for 5 hours interviewing divers as they come in and out of the water, as the boat just rocks very much back and forth for 5 hours straight with no breaks.
Yeah, who knew a shark could get seasick?
Yes, and there was certainly some seasickness that happened, and I think that was a defining moment in our puppetry experience of really pushed the limits of what was possible.
And none of that footage made it into the video.
Oh, no.
None of it made it, because it was Seymour, yelling supportive phrases to divers as they jump in. And at one point, we did an interview on the boat as it's rocking, just in the swell must have been 4 or 5 feet separated by just a few seconds, so it's real rough. And we have Seymour Shark interviewing one of our curators, and everybody's holding on to things. And I think I was holding the monitor for Seymour, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I'm crouched down next to him and got the script in one hand and the monitor in the other. We've got our camera team doing it, and we're all trying not to vomit while this is going on. And it just, so that going with a music video made it so much easier to tell the story than actually going out there and doing the real thing.
Well, you've done these live shows, you've done these videos, and now kind of with the current pandemic, you have kept the Pacific Pals active with an online show called The Daily Bubble. Can you tell us a bit about how that show developed?
Yeah, it was important to us that during the pandemic, we still were able to educate and reach out to our audiences. Since they couldn't come visit their favorite characters, we wanted to let them know that we were there for them and they could still visit. So Luke and I got together and started discussing what we could do. And at the very beginning, we're like, okay, yeah, gung-ho, we can do this every day. And the schedule that we had kind of come up with is the night before we write, we send it out to the actors that night. They shoot in the morning, submit their footage by 11 a.m., and then we edit throughout the rest of the day, rinse and repeat, which became a lot as we went on. But we figured out a better workflow for that, and it was kind of fun to see the characters in their own homes. We got to experience some things. Captain Quinn has a son named Kevin, who is actually the same puppet that Miles was able to modify by removing the mustache. He's an awesome wrangler, and he changed the eyes of the crab to create his son. And they have a cat in the background, and dealing with a lot of the problems that I think most people in the workforce are dealing with through Zoom. Trying to work from home. It was kind of fun to see our characters in that way. But yeah, I think that was really.
And I think we were first to the punch on it too, actually, as far as puppetry from home. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's, but I think it was we'd been going for about a week or so when we started to see the other big puppet names. We're like, oh my gosh, they're doing what we're doing. They're taking them home, and
I
and
think
so
it's great. More
yeah, it is.
puppets out there.
Yeah, it is fantastic. So we were just really, but we were like, yeah, we really got ahead of the game on this, and it was just a matter of because and it still is the case where it's who knows when the next time will be that we'll be able to tell our puppeteers to pile into some ridiculous uncomfortable position to shoot something or have them even just use their normal puppet stage where they do have to be pretty close together. So we had to come up with something else, and it turns out that it was possible, and it's been really cool because we've gotten to flesh out their characters and explore all sorts of stuff that we hadn't gotten to in the daily shows, and I think we know them better now than we really ever have.
I'm always interested in sort of the gear and what makes things possible. What is everybody shooting on? Are they shooting on cameras? Are they shooting on cell phones? What's happening there?
They're shooting on their cell phones,
Yeah,
which
I think
is amazing.
I think all of them are, right?
They're
Yeah.
shooting on their cell phones. Some of them are using computer monitors, and some of them have monitors at home. And some of them, like our seahorse character, she is not using a monitor at all. She doesn't have one, so she's really just using the force,
Yeah.
as it may.
It is a very
She's behind a curtain completely. That puppet was really built just for stage. So she's incredible. Michelle is making that work. She's bringing her out of some fleece blankets, and then she stacked pillows in front of it so she could hide her. She's got the seahorse has an entry point through the head and then a trigger mechanism that goes through the mouth because they have that long snout with the little tiny mouth. So that's been really interesting to watch.
Yeah, basically we in the week while we were getting it ready, I was like, at first we were going to shoot it at the aquarium because we have a small studio space with a green screen there, and the idea is, all right, we'll socially distance ourselves and we'll come in like once a week, we'll shoot a bunch of episodes and we'll edit them, and then and that's what we'll do. But actually, it was the day that we got there to do that. It was right after the closures had happened, and we just walked in and just realized there was zero way we were going to be able to do any of the things that we would normally do while observing social distancing, even with masks. You're close to each other for long periods of time and so on. So we just went, okay, so how about this? What if everybody did it from home? And so we all went home. And at first it was a process of working out, saying, okay, find your best spot in your house and send it to us, and then having to troubleshoot that and so on. And they worked out kind of their own production design from things they had available. At one point, I just grabbed a computer monitor from the aquarium and took it to one of the puppeteers' houses because they didn't have a spare one. And now it works, and it's gotten more refined with time, and now they've gotten really good at it. And so it's surprising how simple it actually is with the technologies that are available now.
Yeah. Well, at the time of this that we're having this discussion, you've produced close to 40 episodes of the show in a sort of a short amount of time. What have you learned about making content for the internet in producing this show?
Oof. That's a great question, Grant. I think, what have we learned? I think give yourself more time than you need. Don't rush yourself. Take your time. And people want it. They want the content. They want to be engaged with your characters. I think it's important that people create a presence. I mean, as I know you have your character, Toily, who's so great. It's important that you make appearances regularly to maintain a fan base.
Yeah, and I think some of the things we've learned, we're also just still in the process of implementing. Like there's the episodes, a couple of weeks from now, we'll have strategies in place that our episodes up to now don't really demonstrate. Because one thing we've realized, that we want to get to the message quickly, right? And in the aquarium, we have a captive audience, so to speak, there, and they've kind of committed to they're going to be there for 15 minutes or so. But the internet, there's 1,000 things trying to grab you, so we've had to learn to be better at holding on to attention and kind of getting to the point. But also, if we get to the point too quickly, or if we make it too short, no one will learn anything. So that's one of the things that sometimes I don't want to say I guess troubles us is we'll see a video of an animal doing something, and it just it's just a real animal doing something cute, and it's got 500,000 views, or 3.5 million views, and we can't achieve that because our videos, in order to really talk about anything in depth, have to be longer. So we just have to kind of accept that the audiences we're going to get are going to be smaller. But then we have to keep refining our ability to figure out what draws people to this. How can we hook new folks in who might be interested for different reasons, and how can we keep them fresh and keep them good? Because at first it was fairly easy to come up with episode ideas because we had every subject in the aquarium, and we dug up a lot of B-roll and stuff that we could use. And as time has gone on, now we're starting to get a little deeper into things. Like last night, I was up late reading about the density of diving birds' bones because we were thinking about doing an episode that dealt with that. And so the question is, how can you talk about these sort of very esoteric and sometimes deep things while still keeping it interesting and funny, and then making sure that the funny doesn't make it so that it doesn't just distract from the whole message, because it's very easy for Seymour Shark to do that. So that's a challenge too. And another really fun one is, I mean, we have some, I don't know, I imagine we'll probably talk more about some specific episodes that are really some of our favorites, but yeah, I think our favorites have been the ones where we've been able to bring in something that's very much from the arts to tell a story that is very much a science thing, or something that people normally just wouldn't think to pay attention to at all.
Well, like what? Can you give an example of that?
Like Abalone.
Yeah, well, like Abalone was one of the first examples. I'm trying to think of. I'd have to look up our episode list because they've been. But like, for example, an ode to crabs, which was Sarah. You were the one who. That was another one of those late night desperation ideas. Turned out to be really good.
I know, I had texted him really late and like, what if the crab does like this really great poem about what it's like to be a crab and kind of give it that Outlander feel, make it really deep, make it just comically over the top. And once we got the footage in there, I mean, the poem was really a collaborative effort between the two of us, but once we got the footage in there of the crabs, the footage was provided to us by Noah, just braving like underwater storms, like just making their way out into the ocean. It suddenly became a lot of fun. And I think from that, it's really cool to see kids respond to that and send their questions, their fan art, their things that they're learning. That's been really neat.
Down beneath the ocean's blue liveth humble scuttlers of every shape and size and hue. Countless be their numbers. Some they hide 'neath tidal rocks, and others in the sand. The brave ones live beneath the docks, or skitter on the land. Omnivores these creatures be, they'll eat whate'er's at claw. Meat, or veg, or clam poopy. They'll stuff it in their maw.
I don't know, I really liked the episode yesterday about Does It Eat? It was Seymour Shark hosting a campy game show, kind of like The Price is Right, but the subject is Does It Eat? And it's these underwater, just invertebrates, sponges and tube worms and things that clearly don't have a mouth. And we kind of found a way to spin it into like a fun, campy game show. That one was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's the challenge is just, and that was another great example of one that episode is entirely about some of the most, at first glance, uninteresting creatures in the world. There's only a couple things that are learned, but it becomes more just about understanding how weird and strange some of these things are. It's a very brief thing, but it hopefully gets people thinking about stuff in a different way. And then like the Ode to Crabs episode, sometimes we say, today we're going to do a craft. But other days we come up with a way to make something kind of goofy, really fun and much deeper.
When you're working with the aquarium, is there an approval process that needs to happen on the content that you create?
Yes, there is. I mean, it has to align with the aquarium's mission. It has to be family friendly, of course. Although swearing puppets are one of my favorite things in the world, that's not something that we can bring to the table. But we do have to run it through the education team or the marketing team. We work very closely with them to make sure that it aligns with the mission that we have.
And luckily, having worked with the institution for so long, it would be much harder to do this if we didn't have a really good understanding of what the aquarium's message is and what the stories are we're trying to tell, and how we tell them. Because it's been a real great thing that as we've done this, we generally can come up with an idea, write it, shoot it, edit it, and deliver it without getting any notes or anything. And when it's received, just great, cool. But I think if we hadn't had such a history of working with the aquarium and working as educators there, and with the Pacific Pals, it would be a lot more difficult. So it's cool to have a really streamlined process that way. It's been very fortunate for us.
As things hopefully get back to normal, what do you see as the future for Pacific Pals? Like if the live shows resume, will there still be more online content because you've had all this experience putting all that together? What do you see as the future?
I like to think so. I think that would be fantastic. I mean, even if it's not the daily bubble, maybe it's the weekly bubble, and still continuing to do this online content. I think the response has been really great, and I like the idea that people can go back and watch their favorite episodes again and again, or just rewind to be able to, if they miss something. I think, yeah, definitely there will be some new stuff on the horizon, as well as new characters coming. Wink, wink. Furry ones, wink, wink.
Yes, they're not all going to be eels.
Yes, we have had the opportunity to work with Swazzle. They're an incredible puppet building company. Patrick and Sean and their team are great, and they built Axel, the axolotl, and they do a lot of. They built Piper as well. The first Piper, the seahorse, was built in-house by folks. We had no idea how to build a puppet or how to skin a puppet. And the gal who had made her originally was a stuffed animal builder, and the puppet weighed a metric ton. But
but with time we have further refined the process and
yes, of course. But they're great, and they're working on our newest character right now.
Yeah, I think it's a really challenging question because we really don't like the aquarium will hopefully reopen soon. I mean, we're hoping that we will be able to, and there's all sorts of and all the protocols that will be in place to make sure that the visiting experience is safe and social distancing is observed, and we've got masks and everyone's keeping their hands clean, and that and everything is. There's no real room in that for an up close and personal experience with an audience of any kind. So it's a challenge. So I think we'll definitely be continuing to do the daily bubble, whether it stays daily or becomes just the bubble or the weekly bubble. We'll definitely be doing that for some time. But when we do come back to doing live shows eventually, these characters have grown so much in the course of this unexpected and rapid descent into just producing all these different episodes about all these different things that I think they'll be much richer, and I think we'll come up with ways to really make the shows that we do better than ever before. I hope so. It'll be interesting to see. It may still be some time away.
Well, if people want to go learn more about the Pacific Pals and the aquarium and all that, where can they go to check it out?
Go to YouTube, go to the Aquarium of the Pacific's Instagram page, Aquarium of Pacific, our website as well. I think probably the best place to go right now is YouTube or Facebook if you want to watch any of the Daily Bubble episodes, the I Love Abalone music videos, Straw Cops, you name it. It's all hosted on this wonderful thing called the internet.
Yeah, if you Googling the Pacific Pals will get you a lot of the stuff. I was very, very proud when we made I Love Abalone that it became one of the top links with abalone in the title. In particular, if you write I Love Abalone, it just pops right up there. But did we mention that we're pretty confident it's the best music video ever made about abalone? I think we can say that don't you think, Sarah, we can say that with certainty? I can't think of a better abalone music video.
Nothing comes to mind, oddly.
Yeah, that's which is one of the joys of our unique work. So So yeah, look us up online, and the content's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. We're still on Instagram and everything. So it's so you can find us almost every day.
Excellent. Well, I will put links to all of that in the show notes for this episode so people can find it all in one place. And Luke, Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Grant. It was a joy to be here with you, and puppet up and rock on, and everybody keep doing your stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure.
Many thanks to Luke Richmond and Sarah Berman for joining me for this episode. For links to the Pacific Pals and some of the other things we discussed on the show, check out the show notes for this episode number 47, over at underthepuppet.com. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback about the show, call our voicemail line at 818-806-9604. Or you can click the Call the Show button in the free Under the Puppet app for iOS and Android. You can also send feedback via email to underthepuppet@gmail.com, or you can connect with the show on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram by searching for Under the Puppet. Thank you so much for listening. This episode of Under the Puppet featured music by Dan Ring and was edited by Steven Staver. Under the Puppet is a production of Saturday Morning Media and made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly pledge for as little as $1 a month. Patrons get new episodes before they are released, behind-the-scenes information, and exclusive bonus episodes. If you'd like to support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly pledge today. You can also tell a friend about the show or leave the show a review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for listening. Under the Puppet is copyright 2020 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Pachogo executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. The new Under the Puppet app is here for iOS and Android, and it is absolutely free. Download it today to get all the episodes of Under the Puppet in one place. Plus, you'll hear new episodes before their release, get exclusive bonus episodes, and more. Just search for Under the Puppet in the Apple App Store for iOS or on Google Play. You can also visit SaturdayMorningMedia.com/apps for direct links. The free Under the Puppet app for iOS and Android. Download it today. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.